and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and thank you so much for joining us today on this week's episode. If my voice sounds a little bit weird, I've spent the weekend so ill, it's not even okay. But we've powered through, we've made it through, and we're back and better than ever. Today has been a good day so far. I went to the I went to Planet Fitness and did 30 minutes on the Stairmaster. I'm only bringing this up because it was the best Stairmaster experience and the worst Stairmaster experience of my life in one experience, right? And I'll tell you why, and this has nothing to do with this week's podcast episode, but just in case, because so many people are doing this Stairmaster trend now, I just wanted to bring it up because I low-key think it's changed my life forever. So I listened to the Girls Bathroom podcast and I watched these girls, Sophia and Cinzia, on YouTube, and Sophia, one of the girls in this podcast and on the YouTube channel, she mentioned that on the Stairmaster, she was talking about her books and how she likes to have her books both on her Kindle and in hardcover, and she was saying she likes to read the hardcover, whatever, like the paper version when she's at home, like on the couch, whatever, but that she'll pick up her Kindle when it comes to going to the gym or right before bed because her boyfriend has to sleep and she can't turn on any lights. So she uses her Kindle on the Stairmaster. That's where my brain went ding ding ding, let's try that. I don't have a Kindle, but I do have an iPad, and so I just blasted the text bigger so that I can still see it when I'm working out. I swear to you, the first 20 minutes flew by, and it was just because I was reading, and I'm gonna get into the book I was reading because that's more on to this week's topic. But it was literally beautiful, you guys. And if you're like me and you have a lot of trouble finding time to actually just having a lot of time to read your book an extended amount of time, then this is the biggest loophole ever imaginable. Because when I'm on my runs, I can't read, obviously. When I'm doing my Pilates, I can't read. But the Stairmaster / when you're doing 12 through 30 or whatever on the treadmill, whatever your gym cardio days, this has changed my life, and I will be doing this for foreseeable because I literally knocked out a chunk of my book and finished it this morning, and it was beautiful. But again, because I've been sick and I think I'm really having trouble gauging my energy levels, I almost passed out when I got off. But I sat down for about 3 minutes and I was totally fine. So we'll move on. We're taking bigger and better strides, and we've learned from our mistakes, but we've also learned that this is a beautiful solution. So do with that what you will. But this week's episode is going to be based on this book that I just finished reading, which is called Madonna in a Fur Coat. Now, this book kind of follows this man who starts to work at this company, and he's my coworker that I work with is so weird. He doesn't have any emotions. He keeps getting mistreated by all the staff, but he just seems to not even care. And then it turns out that he finds this guy's journal and he starts reading his story, and it really goes deeply into this man's yearning and wanting to not possess this woman, but wanting to be her love, wanting to be with her. And he falls in love with her literally through a painting, and it just follows their story and their love story and all of that. And it's kind of a tough one because we already know, and this is not a big spoiler, we already know from the beginning of the book that they're not going to end up together. So it's kind of a major story solely on the basis of yearning and of love and that kind of limerance even. And so I thought this was a really interesting topic to talk about this week, just because, even as a person who's never been in love, I've always been obsessed with love. I love talking about love. I love reading about love. I love watching movies and shows about love. So I feel why have I not spoken about love on the podcast before? Just because I've never been in a relationship. So online, we're seeing a lot of people talk about yearning, and it's often done in a way that is kind of romanticized. So, just last night, I was watching an edit on TikTok of all the Bridgerton men, right? And the Bridgerton series and the Bridgerton men and that director, she's done Scandal, she's done Grey's Anatomy. She does it so well in portraying that yearning, that wanting of love, that longing for a certain person. And so the edit that I was watching followed all the Bridgerton men. We had Simon from Daphne and Simon. There was Anthony as well. and we also had Colin Bridgerton, so all of these men, and it was like an edit of their longing and of their yearning, and I was like, wow, like this is so beautiful, whatever. But on the other flip side, we see a lot of talk about the dangers of limerence, and so before we get a little bit deeper into it, let's draw a line of distinction between the two. So yearning is defined as a feeling of intense longing for something. Some synonyms are, longing, pining, craving, desire. A lot of these kind of like, it's almost like a nostalgic feeling. It's like, oh, like this is something that I feel like would be so good for me. And I want it so badly, but I'm not really going to do anything about it. I want it so badly and it's out of my grasp, but I can't help but allow this thing to consume my thoughts. I spend all of my time just desiring this one thing, knowing that I can't have it, and I'm just pining and pining after it. Now, limerence is defined as a state of mind where someone is intensely infatuated with another person even when they aren't reciprocated. It can be cognitive, emotional, and a physical experience. So here are some symptoms. Literally I looked it up and it's coming up as though it's a disease. So some symptoms here that describe it are intrusive thoughts about the person you're infatuated with, a longing for the person to reciprocate your feelings, an irrational positive evaluation of the person's attributes, neglecting other responsibilities like work and social life, feeling ecstatic when you're thinking about the person, feeling agony when your feelings aren't reciprocated. Now we're seeing a lot of the negative sides that can come with such intense longing. And I don't want to go too deeply into the book because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. I really think that everybody should read it. It was the quickest read ever. I think I read it in like 10 days, and that's with me picking it up maybe once every few days for like 20 minutes at a time. Like it was really not that long. It was maybe 200 pages long. So I really, really recommend, but I do think that it's not a spoiler to mention that limerence and yearning and longing are the major themes of this book. And I think it was really interesting to kind of step inside the shoes of this character who was experiencing these emotions. And we definitely did see a lot of these themes of ignoring your own responsibilities, ignoring your own work and stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting when we think about how love is portrayed in our society as something that's so important and so, irreplaceable as of an experience for humanity and for a successfully lived human life. But on the flip side, it can have such detriments to our lives. And so where are we drawing the line in the sand of thinking, okay, I am longing for this person, I am yearning for this person, and where can we kind of define where, okay, actually what I am experiencing is complete limerence? And I feel like it almost comes from a place that needs to begin with introspection. Because when we're thinking about yearning, it's not necessarily thinking that your life would be meaningless without this other person. I feel like yearning and longing is almost a more positively portrayed emotion because you're more so thinking about the romanticization of a certain, coming together. You're almost looking at it from a point of, this is going to add so much to my life. This is going to boost me so much. This would make me so happy. All of these different types of things. Limerence, however, I think is more detrimental to us because inherently you're lying to yourself from the base of the situation. You're lying when it comes to who this person truly is. An inherent characteristic of limerence is that you're unable to see the person in front of you for who they really are, and instead you're allowing your imagination to fill in the blanks that you don't know. So for example, when you're thinking of the Bridgerton characters, I'm sorry if you've never watched Bridgerton or read Bridgerton, but I think it's a great base point to jump off of. But when you're looking at these men and these women and just how they are yearning for each other, longing for each other, they know each other. They know each other honestly too much a lot of the time, and that's where you get a lot of butting heads and stuff, but they can't help but yearn, they can't help but long, and it's almost this fantastical, perception of these two souls, these soulmates having been pulled apart, and you can't help but yearn because they're two parts of the same whole, so that they have to come back together again to feel satisfied, to feel content. So when you're looking at it from this kind of Bridgerton, kind of Jane Austen-esque longing, then it's kind of giving the sense that, okay, I know this person to their core, and I feel that us coming together would be perfection. Us coming together would make me whole because they are a half of me. Limerance, on the other side, I think is a lot more interesting because it's coming from that place of lies and deceit. Because when you have this intense limerance for another person, you don't know who they are. And that's where it's becoming a lot more dangerous. And I think it's really interesting to kind of think about our crushes and think about our idea of love and our expectations of others when we're trying to form these different types of relationships or romantic relationships or actually even friendships, and how to avoid letting people into our lives that really shouldn't be there in the first place, is that we need to be really honest with ourselves from the very beginning. But it's so interesting, especially when I was going through this book, is that we've already gone through it, and it's in the synopsis, so this isn't much of a spoiler, but he falls in love with a painting. Now, you would think that this is the craziest, expression of limerance. How can you fall in love with a painting? But then you go through this entire story, and again, I'm gonna taper off here because I don't want to get too into it, but I think it's so interesting what we're capable of doing, with our minds, and the extent to which we're able to deceive even ourselves. Because I think that yearning is almost it's the healthier side of the coin to limerance. And with limerance, a lot of the time, not only are you lying to yourself, but with those filling in of the blanks, you are creating this person who doesn't exist. You're creating a person that doesn't exist, and then putting all of your expectations and you're putting your happiness and contentment in the scale, and allowing this person, this fabricated person, to control your emotions, to control your happiness, to control your state of mind. And so that's where it can get really, really dangerous. At what point are we able to distinguish when it's limerance and when it's an inherent intuitive feeling that, this person is your soulmate? That's the real question, isn't it? And this episode isn't going to have a lesson. I guess this is just really something I wanted to talk about, and I hope that you guys can help me out in the comments, maybe talk about your experiences and stuff, and just let me know what your kind of experience with limerance was and what brought you out of it, what allowed you to snap out of it and think about it. Because even when I think back on my past crushes, I feel like at this point in my life, it's really difficult for me to sustain a crush for an extended period of time, because I am more capable of knowing when I'm lying to myself and when it's okay, Sydney, you actually don't know this person at all. And so I feel like my brain latches on to the few crushes that I've had that even could be online. I had a fantastic dream the other day, and now I'm just exposing myself, about Timothée Chalamet. But it's so funny because, I love Timothée Chalamet. I have always had a crush on him. But in my dream, he wasn't even my romantic interest. We were best friends. And it was a dream about our friendship. It started with him cooking. He was coming over, and we were all cooking for a dinner party, and then he was yeah, well, I'm going to Harvard next year. And I was wait, what? You're going to Harvard? He was what, you didn't know? I was no, I didn't know. Let's talk about it, whatever. And why would Timothée Chalamet go to Harvard? I have no idea, right? This is the things that my brain will make up. But, in that sense, it's such a fantastical person already. I don't even have the breath to kind of make up the fact that we are true loves, that it will blossom from friends to lovers or anything in that nature. So I think it's really interesting when we think about what brings us out of this limerance. What is the drop that takes it overboard. But with that, let's read a couple stories on limerance, just kind of as wives' tales, so that we can kind of learn from it and hopefully avoid forming limerant interactions and relationships in 2025. Because the more that you deceive yourself and the more that you lean towards this limerence aspect rather than yearning, and I don't want to say that yearning is bad, and I don't think I've alluded to that in this episode, but I do think that sometimes online you can think that yearning and longing can be bad because it's like you're spending so much of your thought and mind space on this other person. And to an extent, I do find that people who are constantly searching for a relationship, constantly searching for a love, constantly looking for this other half of the puzzle, it's almost kind of delaying your responsibility to live your life as an individual. I think it's almost a procrastination of sorts when it comes to facing your current reality. I do think that that is a negative aspect of both of these, but at the same time, I think it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful that we as humans have this capacity to fall in love and have these huge emotions, these big emotions. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And just because I've not experienced it firsthand doesn't mean that I can't notice the beauty in that. So I think it's all about learning when your yearning and your longing is turning into limerence, because that's where the dangers are really going to come out. So let's go back and let's find a couple stories on Reddit to kind of just get us into this headspace and kind of understand where we could be going wrong. So here's a Reddit story going through what this person learned from limerence. And I think this is really interesting, just because it's putting ourselves in their shoes, and whether or not you've experienced limerence, maybe this can help you move out of that. So this could be a really good thing for everyone from all sides. So let's see. These hard-won insights only came after months of therapy, reaching a breaking point, and finally entering a healthy relationship. I hope I can save you from heartbreak and pain. So let's get into it, you guys. Most of what attracts us to someone initially is pure projection. We have to be genuinely curious about potential partners and understand them as they truly are, not how we want them to be. People have many parts besides the ones we want to see. I think this is so interesting, honestly, from the jump, because so much of this also applies to friendship. I feel like a lot of the times when we find someone that we are so excited to meet, so excited to become friends with, you almost kind of like start a new life together, and you start a new life with this person in your life. But we completely forget that they have had 9 lives before we came around. And so just like in a friendship, as in a relationship, you have to give yourself time to uncover these 9 lives, to see why their characteristics have come about the way that they have. What experiences have they gone through that kind of made them react in this way? What experiences have they gone through that kind of make them see life in this way? There's so many things that impacted the way that you became the person you are today. And the same thing applies to this person that you've projected this beautiful love story onto. There are so many things that they went through. Maybe they had siblings, they had grandparents, they had parents, they had friends, they had exes. They have all these different lives that have compounded into the person that they are today. And I think that is a great reminder for us, not only when we're going into relationships, but also when we're going into our friendships. The version of your loved one that we want to see when they're with us is not at all of the loved one. For example, my loved one acted a lot more like they're compatible with me when we interacted, but they actually have a lot of disreputable qualities that they only show to other people. Now, this is really interesting because I think this is kind of particular to this person, but honestly can apply to a lot of different people, is that I think that the way that these people act around those around you needs as much weight as the way that they act with you. And I think that this is really common when you think about trying to make a list of non-negotiables or whatever for a partner, for a friendship. I feel like non-negotiable lists are great, even when it comes to friendships, not just relationships, even jobs, career, the way that you want to be in life. You need non-negotiables in life just to know exactly what you want and not take anything less, right? But I think that a lot of these non-negotiable lists, you'll see, nice to waiters, nice to these people, because these are all slices of the person that is in front of you. And so I think this is really interesting to bring up because, again, with this limerence, you are not even thinking about the person that is actually in front of you. And I think that we can be blinded when the person is speaking directly to you because you've got love goggles on. So what can you do is kind of think about, take a step back, when you're able to kind of witness this person, not on the first hand, but kind of as a third person from a fly on the wall, if it's possible for you, how are they acting with these people? Or maybe you can kind of if you have mutuals that this person typically interacts with, you can ask around what do you think about this person? How do they usually act? Kind of just get a good breadth of who this character really is. And I think that it can kind of help shatter these really, really thick, heart-shaped glasses that can get us in a lot of trouble. The third one on the list is no one is entitled to anyone else's friendship or affection. I knew this intellectually, but it was a hard pill to swallow emotionally. Now that's also really interesting because I think that a big thing in love and in relationships is that what's meant for you cannot miss you, for one. And also, if you love something, you need to let it go. And I think that this was a really difficult lesson to learn in my early 20s. Well, I'm still in my early 20s, but when I was 19, 20, 21, is that a lot of the time we expect our friendships to last forever. We expect our best friends to be our best friends for life. You said that we're going to go to each other's weddings, we're going to move in together across the street. This is going to be my best friend and my best friend forever and ever and ever. And this can apply even in relationships. You're like, this is my partner, my life partner, my partner in crime. We're going to be together forever. Now, the thing is that that's just not the reality. It's not the reality, and it's really important to learn that lesson early to save yourself the heartbreak of having to let go of relationships, having to let go of friendships, is that nothing is permanent in this life, and that's just the way that nature works. Nothing is going to be permanent in this life, and understanding that is going to help you build the ability to kind of let go of these created scenarios and this created relationship between you and this person that you might have limerence with. It's that, okay, wait, if this relationship lasts, then that's good. If this relationship doesn't last, that's also good. Because me having been in this relationship, me having had this interaction, this series of interactions, it's all a lesson. And it's an experience that I didn't have yesterday, an experience I gained today, and an experience I can learn from and use as a reference point for tomorrow's lesson. Every relationship, every experience you go through, everything that you think about that's happened in the past, it happened in the past, right? And it's in the past, and now you're in the present, and tomorrow there will be a future. But, everything is transitory. And understanding that even in this realm of, you understand it in the realm of education and careers. I feel like it's an easier concept to grasp upon in those categories. And it's harder to think about when it comes to relationships and love just because we're so emotionally invested. But understanding that everything is transitory is going to help you almost detach when things get a little bit rocky. But it's also going to help you appreciate every single moment that you do have with this person. Because understanding that, okay, this is my best friend right now, and, I don't know what the future holds, but knowing that I have this moment right now and that's beautiful, I can really appreciate that. But also, I can't expect this person to be by my side for the next 20, 30, 40 years, and that's okay. It's all transitory. And understanding that and not having all of your emotional and happiness being dependent on this person, being dependent on this relationship, it's going to free you and allow you to kind of go through life with a lighter air, right? Because at the end of the day, you can count on yourself. You're always going to be with yourself for every day of your life. And so that's the one thing that we can always count on, and it's going to help us through this limerence. No matter how confusingly or hurtfully someone treats me, I always want to remain rooted in my values. I treated myself and my loved one less well than either of us deserved because I was desperate to get them to like me and then desperate to convince them that they were wrong to reject me. I think that is so interesting because a lot of the time when you have such a focus and such a weight placed on a specific person and on a specific interaction, and not to spoil, but this is kind of a theme in Madonna in a Fur Coat as well, is that when you place that much weight, all of your actions, all of the way that you act, the way that you react, the way that you think is all dependent on maintaining this connection. And going back to our last point, it's all about not understanding that relationships, just like everything else in life, is transitory, just like seasons, and so when you're not able to grasp that everything comes and goes, some things stay for longer than others, some things come, go, and come back, failing to grasp that concept is going to lead to these types of ways of thinking and this loss of your values and of your strength in your values. And so really leaning on that understanding that things are transitory and nothing that is in your life is going to be permanent. While it is a tough pill to swallow, it's also a comforting thought. When things are bad, it's not permanent. When things are good, it's not permanent. But the bad and the good, it'll keep coming back around just like yin and yang. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. And when you have a beautiful relationship and it ends and it's tragic, you'll have another relationship and it will come and it will go and it will be tragic, but then you'll have another one and it will be good. And that's just the way that it goes. It ebbs and flows. And even in the longest lasting relationships, these ebbs and flows still happen. So understanding that inherently the one thing that you can count on is change, is transition. You're going to be able to lean more inwards and lean more in these pillars of morals, and it will help you through this limerence. Now, this is something that I want to end on because it kind of ties in this longing and this limerence. Longing and limerence, I like that, L's and L's, together. And so this last point says, your partner is not a soulmate who completes you. That's a childish fantasy. Your partner is another human who chooses you, wants to build a relationship with you, and who is committed to working on themselves to be available to you and the relationship. And I think that's beautiful because when it comes to this limerence and this longing and this yearning, and you're spending this amount of time, thinking outwardly, thinking outside of you and thinking outside of you and your morals and your goals and your wishes, and you put all of this weight on this relationship and thinking that I am not complete until this person comes and joins me, you will never find comfort and you will never find contentment, at least not within yourself. At the best case scenario, you might feel happy and content when you're with this person, but when they go away for a week or for a month, or maybe they don't respond to your messages for a few weeks, then all of it goes out the window and you're left with nothing. So I think that's actually a great point to end on, because at the end of the day, it's really important to think about relationships and love and even friendships as something that needs to add to your world, and your world being you. Because each person, each individual, we already have enough, drama, characters, plot lines to fill a book. Each one of us can fill 5 textbooks. And so think about that when you're thinking about this person who could add so much to your life. It's that everything you want is already in you. You just need to have enough time, give yourself enough time and introspection to work on that, to build on that, to build out your world. And then these friendships, these relationships, these careers, these hobbies, they add on to that, and then you have a solar system. But don't allow yourself to think that your world isn't a world until you add another person into that. Then what you're having is meteors colliding. So I think that's a really good way to end on that, because I think that as this podcast is, it's self-development, it's self-building, and even in that we have love, we have relationships, we have this yearning, we have limerence sometimes, but it's really important to think about, at the end of the day, all you have is you, and you is enough. You is deserving of love, deserving of laughter, deserving of joy, and you will get that. And it's all about remembering that everything you want is literally within you. And it just takes that drive and that understanding and patience with yourself to make everything you want come true. And don't forget that you as an individual is enough, and you don't need another person to complete you. You are already complete. Okay. That got really preachy towards the end, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Unfortunately, I think I will be late for work, but I really enjoyed filming this episode, and you guys, please read Madonna in a Fur Coat. I'm telling you, quick read, and it was fantastic. It was really, really, really good. I really enjoyed that book. And Ruby Lynn on Instagram, she just started a book club, Ironically Literate, I think it's what it's called. And so that's where I started reading this book for. It's like an online book club, so that's why I got the recommendation, So if I've got any other great recommendations in the upcoming year, I will tell you guys. You will be the first to know, but that is the first checked off my list, and I hope that you guys really enjoyed this episode. Remember that it's at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok. She's back, you guys. I'm already late, but literally, you guys, I was in mourning the 14 hours it was gone. It was actually not okay, but I was sick, PMSing, and I had a fever, so it's okay. We moved forward, and TikTok is back. The world is all right, and it's totally fine. But at Sydney Jotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I hope that you guys really enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys next Friday. Bye.